Our guest is Brooklyn Law School professor Minna Kotkin. Her work focuses on sexual harassment cases. So Minna, you've been following this case very, very closely. Were you surprised that he was convicted, even though you may have believed that he was guilty?
No, I wasn't surprised. I think the difference in the evidence presented, as well as the general atmosphere around sexual assault based on the Me Too movement has made a difference in the verdict.
So I'm hearing two things from you. So not only was it the strategy, but it was also the environment where this second trial took place. How was the strategy different this time around?
Well, the prosecution was allowed to introduce some very significant evidence. First, they were allowed to introduce the settlement, the civil settlement that Cosby paid to Constant, which was, I think, $3.4 million.
$3.4 million.
Yes.
Okay.
So that suggests to the jurors that something was amiss to encourage Cosby to pay that amount of money. Secondly, certainly I think the public at large and the jurors are taking these kinds of claims and allegations much more seriously, as so many women have come forward to accuse major figures in the media and entertainment.
There's two areas that you addressed here. If we could take a moment and look at this civil settlement, the fact that this civil settlement didn't shield Cosby from these criminal charges, is that going to make people think twice about these civil settlements?
I think people who enter into these settlements are going to think twice, in that I think these, big names that signed agreements felt pretty much immune from criminal prosecution. There hasn't been a case like this really before. This is a first, and we saw with Harvey Weinstein, when women went to the prosecutors, they weren't taken seriously. Now, the Manhattan DA has sort of resurrected those charges, and there's a serious investigation going on. But before that, I think many of these accusers were dismissed. Basically, I think the attitude was, if you voluntarily went into a hotel room or someone's house, it was going to be too hard to convict.
But not anymore.
Not anymore.
Now the jury, they actually asked to have some testimony repeated.
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, the jury asked for the testimony of the advisor at Temple University, who claimed that Constant had told her that she was going to set a big name up for a financial windfall. They had that testimony read back. That would make a prosecutor nervous, but you never can tell about what juries ask for. And the fact that they only took 14 hours to make a decision really suggests that there wasn't much disagreement among the jurors.
When we look at this Me Too movement, it seems like the entire climate within the United States is geared towards giving these powerful men who may have done these heinous acts, bringing them to justice. Do you think that juries now, it's going to be a little bit easier to go forward with these cases?
I think so. I think jurors, especially when there is more than one accuser.
So it's the pattern that's important.
I think the pattern is really important. Whether the individual woman is taken is taken at face value in every case, I'm not sure. But when you have a pattern, when you have several women, as many as 50 women, coming forward and detailing events that are very similar, I think that's the most persuasive kind of evidence you can have.
And that was what essentially sealed his fate.
I think the 5 women who testified basically sealed his fate.
I want to play you a brief statement that Gloria Allred made. Obviously, she represents some of the accusers of Cosby. Listen to this.
A very long journey, but this is an historic result. This was her story. not his story, not history, but the story of her, the story of Andrea Constant, the story of all of those who took that risk against a rich, powerful, famous man, took the risk of being denigrated publicly, took the risk of being sued for what they said because he had the resources to do it.
You heard her. It's her story. It's her historic event. Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you?
Well, that means that the narrative that these women are presenting is really resonating with the public today. And they are being taken seriously in a way that they had not been before. I think these stories are they're pervasive in the literature and the media today, and people can't help but be persuaded that powerful men take advantage.
So you are not only a lawyer and an expert, but you also teach students, future lawyers. How is this movement in these cases changing the way you teach law?
Well, the law until the law of sexual harassment, putting aside sexual assault, has some limitations. The courts have said it has to be really severe to be actionable, civilly actionable. And the courts have not been so sympathetic to the things that happen in the workplace that are really not appropriate. I think that's changing. I think what's viewed as severe harassment 2 years ago may be viewed differently today.
When this verdict came out and when the women started making statements, we also saw footage of Bill Cosby going back to his home. He was released. He wasn't immediately taken into custody. Was that a mistake in your view?
Yeah, I think it's unlikely that Bill Cosby is going to try to skip bail. I think he's out on $1 million bail. I understand they've taken his passport. There's some question about a private plane, but I think it's unlikely that he will disappear.
What about the sentencing? We know what he could face. What do you think he will face?
That's a really interesting question. I'm really not sure. I don't think that a judge will release him from any jail time. How long? It's hard to say. I think it has to be more than simply a slap on the wrist.
And what about further civil cases against him?
It's unlikely that any civil cases can be brought because of the statute of limitations, which for civil actions of this sort is very short. However, the criminal statutes of limitations for sexual assault are much longer, and this may encourage other women to come forward who cannot bring a civil action, but may be able to file complaints with prosecutors' offices, and the prosecutor's office may pursue them.
How significant do you think this is as a historic moment? What precedent does it set?
Well, I think we've experienced a historic moment for the last 6 months or so, and this just is sort of the culmination of what's been happening for a bit now. I think we will see more prosecutions, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how many.
Thank you very much. Minna Kotkin, Brooklyn Law Professor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.